Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Wilson, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of Advisoryworld. It's nice to be here with all of you today. Today, I'm going to focus on our proposal generation capabilities, especially as they pertain to integrating with a few of our key partners, and look at what we're considering the synchronized proposal process, starting from contact to all the way through fulfillment. Just a little quick background on our company. We've been doing this since the late 80s, 1987. In fact, one of our longtime clients is sitting here nearly in the front row with us, so he can, Scott could tell you a few good stories about our firm at a later point. And just in general, our mission is to make sure that you and your advisors have access to the best quality tools to help you with portfolio analytics, investment planning, and proposal generation in general to increase AUM, attract and retain new business. A little bit more about our core competencies and our skill set. We could be generally put into a few buckets of risk profiling and measuring risk across individual investments, across portfolios. We have the ability to backtest hypothetical scenarios, do drill down analysis to look at diversification risk, as well as forward-looking projections with Monte Carlo simulation. And as I'll point out today, we're not a financial planning software solution, but we know enough about the portfolios to be able to project going forward using both straight-line cash flows and Monte Carlo simulation. And of course, we have the proposal generation piece, which I'm going to focus on here today. Inside the proposal process, I think there's a few key steps, starting with gathering information about the contact, including location, age, any type of group or household information, family members, and what have you. Then we look at current accounts. This is an optional step, but if you want to be able to assess current versus proposed, of course, it's sometimes more meaningful to look at current assets that a statement you might be able to get from a statement rather than to compare simply cash versus a suggested model allocation. We have an optional step of looking at the goals as well. As I mentioned, we have the lightweight planning capabilities. Risk profiling is a huge part of this, and we have a questionnaire that's standard. We also fit in a lot of different third-party questionnaires, such as SCI, LPL has their own questionnaire. Many of your firms might have their own questionnaires or your own questionnaires that we could fit into our standard stack. And we have, from that point, model selection, some of the answers to the questionnaire, some of the information about the type of account that you're suggesting, qualified versus non-qualified or whatnot. We'll cull down the list of the models. Once you've selected a model, you're on your way to presenting that model with a whole lot of collateral, whether it's analytical, back-tested hypothetical scenarios showing current versus proposed again, or if you want to have more of what I like to call like the feel-good story of the year, talking about your firm, the reason that you've chosen these managers, the reason that you're selecting this model for a firm, you have that flexibility as well. And then the last bullet point here is what we're considering fulfillment. This is the newest part of what we're offering. It's why we're here at Laser App this week. Right now, or to date, all of our proposals have kind of ended on what I call Proposal Island. So you get a beautiful PDF, whether it's got that quantitative statistics, whether it has the quantitative statistics rather in it or not. It tends to sit there. You have a PDF, you submit it to your client or your prospect, or you print it out in a nice handbook or what have you, and you give it to them. That's great. But the fulfillment piece is what we're so excited about, because now what we're going to be doing is taking the proposal and pushing all the content into Laser App forms, for example, and pre-filling all these forms so that it doesn't live on Proposal Island anymore. Now it's an actionable next step. Fill out the forms, have them signed. One of the things that we're doing with one of our close partners, TD Ameritrade, is actually taking it one step further with straight through processing. So we'll be actually opening the new accounts with DocuSign's help. So this is all new for us, but it's coming now. Sorry, it's a little bit difficult to see this slide, but again, it talks about, this slide is showing us the typical workflow. And if we start here at the top, it's with contact information, account information, current positions. If a statement's faxed in or what have you, you could enter those positions either into our native application, or in what I'm presenting today, of course, is our ability to integrate with leading third-party apps like Redtail. So perhaps if you're starting with your CRM, like many of you are, if you're looking at starting with Redtail or potentially some of the other vendors like Salesforce or eVic CRM or whatnot, we can collect all of that information in a synchronized manner and start the proposal process there, at which point the risk profiling and goal information might be entered in our application again natively, or you might enter that in MoneyGuide Pro, at which point we can consume all of that data automatically through web services, no keystrokes, no entry of data. Once it comes over to us, that's where we handle all of our magic. You know, we run our portfolio analysis on the current accounts. We have the business logic layer where we say, okay, if you have this risk profile, here's the suggested model allocation, or here's the efficient portfolio allocation for you using optimization. As we continue on through the path, we go through the proposal piece, and then we step into the new account opening, which I mentioned. We're working with Laser App, we're working with TD Ameritrade, but we're also working with Orion Advisor, which is one of our biggest partners. And with Orion, we also will be taking those same data elements and passing it through what they have, I believe it's called the new account opening wizard. And so we'll push it into their application as well. If you're using Orion, it's obviously a big win to be able to step into their robust new account opening process. The other side of fulfillment that I'll get to in a little bit later is kind of the round trip, if you will. Once you've opened that a new account, it's now servicing that account. And that's another place where our partner Orion Advisor and we excel together, because they can call all of our great analytics for analyzing forward, once you have that account, how things are progressing over time, running comparisons, looking at reasons to rebalance and what have you. And of course, I have on the top here the custodian, which would be TD Ameritrade Institutional, for example, or any of the other custodians that you all might be using, Pershing, NFS, or whatnot. What you see now is what I would call last year's proposal tool. And I say that because it's a little bit of the older interface. However, it's going to give you a good idea as to how this the process works. It's still a viable product used by thousands of advisors in the marketplace. But I call it last year's because literally we're going through a redesign right now, and you'll see some of the new interface shine through in later slides in this deck. Again, I need to mention something really important in our offering. We specialize in delivering these tools in three key manners. One is through what we would consider off-the-shelf apps, like this one. We also specialize in exposing our capabilities through web services, through an API. So a lot of third-party partners of ours tap into our secret sauce, if you will, and redesign the front-end layer of the whole application. I know that's somewhat of an abstract statement, but think of being able to put your own car body on top of our chassis. And that's what we're doing here. And then the last is through our professional services, where we take our core competencies and wrap either custom reports or custom workflows or what have you on top of our core capabilities. Here's step one: client information, contact information, same things we looked at before. This is in what I would consider our native workflow or native app. We collect basic client information, then account information, setting up what type of accounts that your prospects or your existing clients might have. Qualified money, non-qualified money, again, that's all setting things up for selecting the appropriate model. So you can see you have all these different types of accounts you may be working with. Think of how this is going to play off in the fulfillment stage down the road, because we'll be able to know which forms need to be filled out based on what type of account we're setting up here for the prospect. Please, Scott.
Does that integrate with Redtail if we have the data in
That's, yeah, that's coming up. I'll show you that in a few slides, but thank you.
Is it also editable? I mean, if there's fields that aren't available that we need, is that modifiable?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, anything that we pull across, you could edit. It can be synchronized back to a red tail, back to Orion, if depending on how you'd like that set up. Here we have current account information, including current holdings. This is where we can do some analysis on the current assets in this portfolio with our holdings here report, which I know you're familiar with, Scott. And you can see we have both the diversification statistics and the quantitative analysis on the back-tested performance to look at things like risk and return, as well as potential overlap issues for any individual equities, country and sector exposure. This is a step where we go through the risk profiling. And you'll see you have the option to fill out a risk profile questionnaire. Again, this is the part that is highly customizable at the firm level. We have a default questionnaire. It can be changed. Based on the answers to this questionnaire, it will default to a certain bucket, like growth with income. And that bucket, if you sit down with a client or the prospect and they say, well, I'm more conservative or I'm more aggressive, you can override these. But if you do override that, there's a suitability confirmation that comes through. So I would consider this something that could help you, cover your butts in any type of arbitration or suitability review.
Can we, am I understanding this that we can maybe put this on our website or something like that? Is that something we could, this process could be on our website?
Certainly. So our applications can be framed directly into websites. The technical term is IFrame. And so you can call any of these components, seamlessly sign on to our application, and even provide somewhat of a light client piece to it, so they could actually log in and pre-fill information and pass it to you. Here's where we select a target portfolio. You can see in this case it's a shell asset allocation with which you could implement individual funds. It really varies on different strokes for different folks. If you have a model that may consist of mutual funds and or ETFs, or if you have a separate account strategy, all these different models can be pre-constructed, preloaded, so technically an individual investor could select it for themselves if you wanted to go down that path.
So if they're a growth and income, it could be your model that fits the growth and income portfolio.
It can be your model that fits the growth and income portfolio. Further, you can have additional qualifiers. So if you've got a prospect that fits the growth with income mold and they have a non-qualified account, then they might need a tax-sensitive version. If they hit certain thresholds, for example, maybe if they have $1 million in cash and they're an accredited investor, all of a sudden they qualify for alternative growth with income tax-sensitive. There's all these different ways to qualify and cull down the strategies based on parameters that come before selecting the actual model. Just depends how deep you want to get with it, but the gist of this is that we have all the handling in our apps to cull down those lists and to support that. You see we even have an asset screener, an investment screener, so if you wanted to have this type of shell allocation, you can have criteria to build out those different asset classes. We have the efficient frontier. This would be something I would consider being used for building a custom model allocation. So if you didn't necessarily want to use the pre-baked models and you wanted to build a custom solution based on the risk sensitivity of the client, you can absolutely leverage the efficient frontier. And then at the end of the run, you get to our proposal documents, compare scans, investment policy statement. There's a lot of different collateral that's a part of this. So that was yesterday's proposal tool. Here's where we're headed now. So I please pardon the screen. It's not showing that much clarity, but this is a sample of a contact information page. And you'll notice that it's got all these different fields which could be edited, but we tap into Redtail in this case And you'll see right here in Redtail, it says Advisoryworld Reports. If you click on any of those links, it will step right into our application in what's called in context, meaning that everything that you see on the Redtail side that is meaningful to Advisoryworld's proposal process will be automatically kicked over to us. It's just as simple as that. You click right here, and it fires across to us. And we'll even pull across the positions. So here you've got a bunch of positions in Redtail. You can see they'll come right through. And I can show this to you real time. Now I can show it to you in the other room when we have a little bit better internet connection. But this isn't smoke and mirrors. This is happening today with our close partners. Close partners like Redtail, like I mentioned, we're doing with Smart Office. We have obviously a huge integration with Orion Advisor, Albridge Wealth Reporting, and Money Guide Pro, amongst others. But these are all the partners that I'd consider being advanced in the sense that we have this contextual integration. All of these partners can step into our application in context. All of these partners can call our reports in context, meaning that you don't have to touch your keyboard one time to be able to go from Orion or Redtail or Money Guide Pro to us and run our analytics. It's all mouse clicks, which that's one of the key efficiencies that I find. Here's some lightweight goal entry. With the Money Guide Pro team, we're also pulling across their goal information. So if you've set certain goals in Money Guide Pro and you want to port those across to us, that's completely feasible. In fact, at the T3 Enterprise Conference coming up in November, we'll be showcasing some new stuff with Money Guide Pro that'll be really newsworthy. But we continue to foster that relationship on both sides of the equator. So you can see here you've got some goals inside of a Money Guide, and this shows better real time than it does on a deck. But again, we can pull all that into our app, including all the positions. Here's our new risk profiling screen. Same type of stuff we looked at before, but going through this screen, it'll update real time. You'll see where your score is coming out. The model selection, again, we talked about that, how we're culling down the list based on criteria, based on parameters consisting of the risk profile, the tax sensitivity, all the other factors, the type of investments that you're able to qualify for, the accredited investor parameter. Certain clients of ours are interested in having a socially responsible qualifier on this. So all these different elements are things that we can and will be supporting. All right, so this is an example of another screen where we're selecting a model, a little bit more presentation layer to it, meaning that we're presenting the models inline here. This happens to be a pre-baked solution that you can see. Here's the current allocation, and then we're automatically optimizing portfolios that would outperform the current portfolio one, and then also match certain goal requirements. And we give 3 different options. These are canned in the sense that we're pre-baking the constraints on the optimizer, saying that in the first one there are no constraints. In the second one there's a little bit more constraint. In the last pie chart there's a lot more constraints, saying that you've got to have at least, I think it's, 8 or 9 different asset classes as part of this solution. Basically, this is another example of where we have a highly customized presentation layer, customized interface for one of our clients, but it's using the same core building blocks of building a proposal, including the model selection piece. Now, with the presentation layer, there's quite a few key elements of how we put together our output. The first is to focus on risk management. And we tee that up in a few key ways. One is by, like I mentioned, assessing current allocation. If you can get the statement and run some back-tested scenarios to determine how volatile that portfolio might be. Perhaps, again, there's some diversification risk. There's maybe too few asset classes, or there's high equity exposure. That's a big part of it. Of course, we want to make sure that we have an investment policy statement in place. And that investment policy statement would cover the objectives that are set forth from both a risk perspective on the investment objective, as well as any potential goals that might be outlined in the plan. As far as the risk management goes, we also want to make sure that the models that are selected fit and are suitable with that investment objective. So if the client scored 2 growth with income, we need to make sure that the suggested allocation fits that. And again, our business logic layer will ensure that, and we'll even throw flags if it does not match it. We have different elements of showing things in red, for example, or alerting to that. The second piece of this would be the compliance and full disclosure element of our report. And with that, again, we need to make sure that the investment policy statement is made clear. We fill out all the forms in this in the latest iteration. So as long as those forms are checked out with Laser app, or when we're working with Orion Advisor down the road on this, that's a big part of the suitability requirement. Let's see here, the transparency is an important piece of this. This is where there's a couple key things here, and I mentioned before the feel-good story of the day. Well, it's not just the feel-good story of the day. It's important to make it clear to your clients and to your prospective clients that you understand who the asset managers are in play here. It's important that they know that you recognize who these managers are, what type of strategies that they're using, if they have any type of alternative investments, what that might mean to their portfolio in terms of up and down market capture, what type of correlation effect that might have on your portfolio. And also with the holdings, on both the current and the proposed holdings, we can do this look through that we call the macro allocation. We're able to determine how much equity, fixed income exposure is there. We can do the look through all the way to the sector and country exposure. Potentially there may be risk in, certain Eastern European markets, or even closer to home. Maybe there's nearshore potential issues. All of these things are clearly exposed through our reports, and that's a huge part of you and your advisor's duty to be able to demonstrate that to clients. Also a big part of our proposal output is our fee demonstration. We have, by default, one page that talks about overlay fees, expenses on funds. I know that FINRA requires standardized returns. That's another element that is core to our report offering and baked in. I should also mention that all these reports have been reviewed by FINRA. As part of the proposal, we're able to analyze goals, and not just the retirement income goals, but also the accumulation phase to see if potentially any of the money that you're contributing today, how that will affect forward-looking goals and the likelihood of succeeding. And then as far as illustrating performance goes, I've also mentioned that, but we have the ability to backtest hypothetical performance. We have a whole slew of MPT statistics, anything from alpha to beta. Like I mentioned, we have up and down market capture, downside deviation, which leads to Sortino ratio. I mean, we could go on and on. But the ability to illustrate that performance and to showcase the reasons for moving from a current allocation to a proposed allocation is paramount to our offering. And you can see we have an inline presentation I mentioned before, and I showed you some of that efficient frontier optimization part in this custom solution. But you can see we show right here inline, meaning that it's on your browser. It doesn't have to step into a report. We have additional content here where we can show range of returns, range of values. And then we have our presentation in output in a PDF, which in this case we're looking at a few different PDFs on the screen. One, the furthest to our left, is kind of our native branding and our native report at Advisoryworld, which can be customized in its own right. You can change the logos, change the colors, change the fonts, change the disclosures, all in our standard stack. There's nothing custom about that. But then the two to the right of that, the middle one is a report we've done for a company named Fortigent. The furthest one to the right is for a company, LPL Financial, both of which we customized from the ground up. We built these reports from the ground up. They leveraged our design team, who does work for Intel. They do work for Qualcomm, and they do work for a little company named Advisoryworld too, but we happen to be doing business on behalf of LPL and Fortigent, SCI, all these other firms that leverage our core design work. This is just a testament of how we've built very customized solutions, customized reports in a timely manner that look nothing like the report on the left, but have all the same building blocks that I described on the previous couple slides. On the fulfillment side, I mentioned previously that we have the TD Ameritrade institutional integration coming along with the help of DocuSign, of course. The reason we're here with Laser App is because we will be pre-filling forms. But on the next slide, we start to look at fulfilling proposals through our integration with Orion Advisor, where we will be taking these proposals and pushing them through Orion's new account opening wizard, which will, of course, open up a lot of new avenues, especially the hooks, not just to TD Ameritrade Institutional, but through Fidelity and NFS and potentially LPL Financial and all the other firms that their firm opened us up to. So this is one piece of that. The other part of the fulfillment, as I briefly alluded to in the beginning, is kind of the round trip fulfillment, where someone is already a client, that account is now open, and next quarter or next year or 2 years from now, you need to go back in time and sit down with that client and review things. Our integration with Orion is very deep in the sense that we can call in any of our, any of the accounts into our application and rerun all of our magic with the proposal tool as current versus proposed. Sure, please.
Question there. So you've got a history last quarter. Maybe you rebalanced last quarter. Will your proposal tool pull in the transactions and show the clients, their actual?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So with the integration with Orion Advisor, for example, this screen is showing Orion's native report writer, and actually with their report engine, all the content can be actual, all right, for the last quarter, for your example. However, all of our secret sauce, all of our reporting capabilities and the ability to show macro allocation, the look-through analysis, that can all be called into their native writer. So it looks like the same consistent report from page 1 to page 10, even though quadrant C of page 3 is all Advisoryworld. It's got the same native look and feel. So in the fulfillment stage, again, when we come full circle, and now we're working with an existing client on a quarterly review, it's the same message. The same things that you were talking about last quarter or last year is flowing through in a consistent manner with all the same branding elements. Everything is still there. Now, if you wanted to kick that back over to us and run a comparison or do any of the type of proposal pieces kind of on date 3, absolutely could do that in context again with vendors, with the vendors I mentioned. And again, so today we've gone over this, the integrated workflow starting into CRM, like our friends at Redtail, or if you're using Salesforce or any of the other folks that we integrate with, that's super too. And then we get through the risk profiling and goals with MoneyGuide Pro, step into Advisoryworld for our analytics and our proposal process, including the output. And then we push back across to DocuSign, Laser App, TD Ameritrade, Orion Advisor for the fulfillment stage, and onto the custodian like TD to actually open the new accounts. So with that, I just like to open up the floor if there's Any questions? I did that good. All right.